Let's move to Block C now under Framing. Down under Trends, right at the very beginning, it says, building wall and roof sections on the ground and lifting them in place with a crane is becoming more common due to safety and efficiency concerns. See, we're seeing a reference here made to a crane and lifting and booming up trusses and roof assemblies. So you can expect to find perhaps some rigging questions or hand sealing questions also in the framing section on the exam. It's been mentioned so many times that there's probably going to be more than one question, as you can see. So let's move ahead now to section C10. C10 under Constructs Wall Systems. We'll look at C10.01.13, assemble prefabricated wall systems such as SIPs. Now, what are SIPs? If we look over in the next task 11 under Constructs Roof and Ceiling Systems, it's mentioned again, rafters, ridge boards, SIPs. Obviously, it's an acronym, and if you don't know what it is, you probably want to find out. And if you look in our glossary that we provided, you'll find SIPs there explained out exactly what it is. So as you can see, the National Occupational Analysis is a great study guide for the acronyms, terms. Basically, you can break it right down to what the questions are going to be on the IP. It's really it's almost a legal cheat sheet that you can use to study for the exam. Very helpful. Let's look at a couple more before we leave this document. Let's see. Let's look over at C11. Constructs C11.02 constructs roof and ceiling framing, and it's C11.02.13 where it says install equal and unequal slope intersecting roof components. Now, if you look through the document and as you read it through, and I suggest that you do read this document through, and read it very carefully so you can really get the most out of it. Unequal slope intersecting roof components is mentioned here. It's the only place it's mentioned throughout the document. So on complicated roofs, you can be pretty safe to say that there's probably only going to be no more at the most, if any, one question on the exam regarding unequal slope intersecting roof components, because it's not mentioned. It's not mentioned very much. It's the only spot that is mentioned in the document. Let's skip ahead. Let's skip ahead to Block E. Block E, interior finish. We'll look at K4. And this is a reference to the code. It says here, knowledge of fire stopping, fireproofing requirements such as 1 and 2 hour rating. This is an indicator that if you don't know about fire ratings on products, you should find out about it. It's mentioned in the building code, and it's very handy to know where those sections are in the building code before you write the test. It saves a lot of fumbling and fooling around searching the code. And we'll talk about a little bit more about that further along. So let's head over to task 17 now, just before we leave this section of the National Occupational Analysis. It regards installing interior doors and windows. And here's some terms that you may not be familiar with. It starts right off with tambour doors, sliding doors, swinging doors. You read throughout it, it talks about accordion doors, and then some parts of doors and windows, astragal, scutcheons, mullions, sashes, transom. Terms that if you're not familiar with, that, hey, you know what, they could show up in the exam. They're in the National Occupational Analysis. They're fair game for a question. Let's move towards the back and look under Appendix B. Appendix B, there's a glossary here too that'll explain some of the terms out, as well as the one we provide. There's also a glossary right in this document. Doesn't cover everything, but some of the words and some of the terms are explained out here, which can be helpful. And if we slip ahead one more to Appendix A, you'll see there is a list of tools and equipment. And if you're not familiar with the tools and equipment listed here, it's probably a pretty good idea. If it's listed in this document, it could show up on the exam. So you would want to become familiar with the operation of it and the maintenance of those particular tools if you're not already. That'll end this section. Okay, now I want to take a minute and just go over a little bit about the Red Seal exam that you're going to write. This is the actual Interprovincial Red Seal exam you're going to write for your papers. There'll be 100 questions on the exam. There'll be all multiple choice. There'll be 4 answers, 1 correct answer, and what we call 3 distractors, which are logically wrong answers. Answers you would logically arrive at wrong. I'll give you an idea just exactly what I mean. For instance, the question could read something to the effect of calculate the roof sheathing for a gable roof and add 15% waste. Well, of course, it's going to be the right answer, But one of the wrong answers is going to be if you calculate the roof and forget to add the 15% waste. And probably maybe the other two answers would be if you only calculated one side with the waste factor and one side without the waste factor. So you could see where you could arrive at all those answers wrong. And it'll look like the right answer was on the paper. So what I always suggest if you're doing these calculation questions is to cover up the answers. Work through the question, then look to see if you have the right answer. It's very easy to do the equation and keep glancing over to see if you're coming up with the right answer. Well, guess what? You would come up with the right answer, or what looked to be the right answer, if you only partly did the question. So read the question very carefully and cover up the answers and work it through from there. Now, something to remember that of those 100 questions, regardless of what type of question it is, all those questions are still only worth 1 point. So of the 3 types of questions, math questions, code questions, and general knowledge questions, they're all only worth 1 point. Although, of course, math and code questions are going to take quite a bit longer than a general knowledge question. So what I recommend is to do the general knowledge questions first, the questions you can answer right off the top of your head. So be very careful as you do this. Go through, do the answers you know, skip the code questions, skip the math questions, come back to it. But make sure you identify that you've skipped a question both on the test and on the answer sheet. Now, you're going to have a separate answer sheet to answer your questions on. We call it a bubble sheet, where you fill in the little A, B, C, or D, or 1, 2, 3, 4 for which correct answer that you wish to make. So on that answer sheet, as you skip questions, make sure you make a little mark to recognize the fact that you've skipped on the answer sheet as well as on the test sheet. It saves a lot of erasing if you have to go back and do all that change. Of the 100 questions, approximately 25 of them are going to be code questions. So you want to get very familiar with Part 9 of the building code. They're going to supply that for you in a photocopied version to do the test. So you're not going to have to bring your code book. And they're not going to give you a code book. They're going to give you a photocopied Section 9 of the code book. So you should get familiar, as I mentioned before, with Section 9. So you know where framing, the first section where framing is going to be, the section where concrete's going to be, the section where finish is going to be. Just so it saves some time fumbling around trying to find the section during the test. Now, 4 hours to do the exam. You got 4 hours to do the 100 questions. That's 2.4 minutes a question. And for example, if it was taking you 5 minutes a question to look up the National Building Code questions, and there's 25 of them, that's 125 minutes spent just on code. And that would only leave you 1.53 minutes left to do the other 75 questions. So you want to get quite familiar with the building code before you do it. Now, let's talk about preparing for the test itself. Before you actually get there, get a good night's sleep. Get to bed early that night. Leave the celebrations alone until you finish the test the next day. So get a good night's sleep. Arrive early at the exam site if you're running in at a campus. And if you're not familiar with that campus, get there early. Find out where you're going to park. And one of the other things to do when you get in, find out where the bathroom is. It's a lot easier to recon the bathroom before you write the exam than to burn up valuable test time trying to find out where the bathroom is during the exam, because that's just going to cut down the time you have for questions. So if you have to go to the bathroom, know where it is before you start the exam. If you drink coffee, drink it in moderation. The more times you go to that washroom, the more time it's going to burn up and take away from the test questions you're going to need to answer. Don't forget to bring your exam acceptance letter. If you don't have the letter, you're not going to be able to write the exam. So make sure you bring your exam acceptance letter. It's easy to forget in the morning. Also, if you wear reading glasses, make sure you bring them. We had a student that passed, failed his exam because he forgot his reading glasses home, didn't have time to go back to get them. And who needs that stress? He got it the next time around, but nobody needs that aggravation. Also, you're going to be able to use a calculator. You cannot use the calculator on your cell phone. They're going to collect your cell phone before you write the exam. So you're going to have to check your cell phone at the door when you come into the room. Also, construction master calculators you cannot use, or programmable calculators, so be aware of that. Basic calculator with square root function is what you need. Now, I suggest you bring 2 calculators. In the event that the batteries die on one of your calculators, or if it falls out of your hand or drops out of the vehicle when you get out in the morning, explodes into 100 pieces. Nobody wants to write the exam without a calculator. It's a handicap you do not need. So a couple of cheap calculators with the square root function. If one breaks or one dies, you get a backup right there. Pencils will be provided, so you don't have to worry about that. They'll have ones with the proper lead, the weighting of lead to fill the bubble sheet in so that the answer sheet is mechanically marked. Also, when you're sending in the exam, you're going to find that some people are going to finish early. You're going to be writing in a room that's going to be a red seal. There's going to be people that are writing the red seal for carpentry, mechanics, refrigeration, cooking. So there's going to be a lot of people in the room. Some people are going to finish earlier than others. Don't get frustrated or worked up when you see other people leaving ahead of you. Could be simply they weren't prepared to write the exam, didn't know the answers, and have cashed in early. So just pace yourself and don't worry what the rest of the class is doing. You got 4 hours. Follow these strategies and you'll do fine. We'll go from there. Now, in this course, you're going to have the opportunity to write 5 100-question tests. Now, these tests will be weighted similar to the National Occupational Analysis with the corresponding 6 different sections. So what you should do when you write them is time yourself. Be aware that you have 4 hours to do the test. Think of it as if you're writing your actual interprovincial exam. When you finish the test and you mark it yourself, don't study the questions you have wrong. Don't think of it that way. These questions are not going to be the questions that show up on the interprovincial exam. If you have a wrong answer on a question, use it as a study guide to study that subject matter, not the question. I can't emphasize that enough. Use it to study the related subject, not the question. And what can I say? Good luck. And we'll see you as a Red Seal Journey person very soon.